Brothers and sisters, citizens, yours truly, DRAGAN, independent citizen, athlete, activist, and artist. Wednesday, March 25th is gonna be it's an emergency cup of coffee again. Continuing a series of coffee with Dragon series War Against Corona. First and foremost, I wanna bless with health, send love, and free millions of hugs, virtual hugs to my brothers and sisters, and those hugs after we win this war, and we win. And much more citizen massages and washing their hands and feet of our nurses, doctors, and healthcare professionals, those willing, of course. Right here in Hawk Island, also known as Montreal, Saint Mount Royal. The situation is dire, it's unprecedented, but gotta keep on fighting. Again, wash your hands with soap. And first, I wanna say, brothers and sisters, let the light in. Let the light in, let the light in. Let the light in, let the light in, let the light in. Mr. Prime Minister, I need a guitar, I need a guitar. Mr. President, I need a guitar, I need a guitar. I will be reading about the coronavirus. This Coffee with Dragon reading session is dedicated to our brothers and sisters on the front lines of the war against corona. My brothers and sisters working in the healthcare system at all levels. Bless you with health, bless you with strength, bless you with love. Cheers, this is to you. I just have to say that since I'm doing laundry, I'm doing multitasking, I'm started a 22-day cleaning, purification, and reordering of my room, office, and temple, which is right here. That has also served as a gymnasium in the past, more than 2 years, where I've lost 65 pounds. All my workouts will now be dedicated to our soldiers on the battlefield, front lines, our doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals, grocery store operators at all levels, those providing us the essentials of courses and calling for a local, national, and international creation of a volunteer citizen army to secure food, housing, and transport free of any financial cost. That is for our citizens to secure, those willing and those in need, of course. Of course, those who are already millionaires and top banking elite and financial elite and entertainment and sports elite do not require those three. But myself included, do. Brothers and sisters, I love you. Let's keep on fighting. Wash your hands with soap if need be. More and more. Don't go out if you don't need to. Unless for a walk, of course, but I mean for going out where people congregate, social distancing as much as you can. If you have the symptoms, coughing, fever, or of course breathing difficulties, problems, consult your local authorities, call the number provided, and isolate for 14 days. If need be, assess your situation, and if need be, go to a clinic or according to the severity of the hospital. Again, I'm making a call as I made in the past weeks for our most blessed sports with a sports entertainment finance business to give at least a 10%. Those who are millionaires and multi-millionaires and in Canada and of course United States, we have billionaires to inject at least 10%. Hopefully my message, I don't know when I'm gonna, it's probably gonna be overnight. By tomorrow it's be online. So if anybody hears this, please pass it on and make that call with yours truly, Adrian H. Dragon, the Corona Citizen Corona Committee. I'm calling for the committee to be formed locally, nationally, internationally as a integrated volunteer army, integrated with all public and private institutions and organizations at all levels. A jar ready for my lentils. Have to excuse me as we go. Yeah, actually, a jar ready for my lentils. Perhaps best wait. Nauseous, this beautiful deck which can learn more about what's inside and how it actually works. To Google coronavirus. I'm a millennial, born in '84. You have to excuse me. I'm gonna Google this one, and we'll read about the coronavirus. Have to do it again. Coronavirus. Wikipedia. Coffee with Dragon. This reading session is dedicated to my brothers and sisters on the front lines. Soldiers, now warriors, fighters in the war against Corona, which have declared war on. As an athlete, artist, an activist, independent, and to that trinity adding the fourth dimension of being a spiritual teacher. Ready, rock, roll. 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic. 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic. The 2019-2020 corona, I'm reading from the Wikipedia page. 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic is an ongoing pandemic of coronavirus disease 2019, also known as COVID-19, caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2. The outbreak was first identified in Wuhan, Hubei, China in December 2019 and was recognized as a pandemic by the World Health Organization, the WHO, on 11th of March 2020. As of 25th of March, more than 445,000, oh my goodness, 445,000 cases, so it's increasing rather at an alarming rate. As of March 25th, which is today, this is updated regularly, more than 445,000 cases of COVID-19 have been reported in more than 190 countries and territories. Last time I checked, I think last few days ago was 156, so it's went up on a lot of countries, resulting in more than 19,700 deaths and more than 112,000 recoveries. This is the map of the coronavirus pandemic by rates of confirmed cases being the darker red being 1,000 and more. And we see that only a few countries now are without any confirmed case. Very few. And then we have a case per million, so it's a good graph. Of course, it's worldwide. The virus is typically spread during close contact and via respiratory droplets produced when people cough or sneeze. I'm going to read that again. The virus is typically spread during close contact and via respiratory droplets produced when people cough or sneeze. The virus is typically spread during close contact and via respiratory droplets produced when people cough or sneeze. Respiratory droplets may be produced during breathing, but the virus is not considered airborne, as airborne would be quite an alarming transformation if the virus is indeed airborne. It may also spread when one touches a contaminated surface and then their face. It is most contagious when people are symptomatic, although spread may be possible before symptoms appear. The time between exposure and symptom onset is typically around 5 days, but may range from 2 to 14 days. Common symptoms include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Common symptoms include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Common symptoms include fever, cough, and shortness of breath. Complications may include pneumonia and acute respiratory distress syndrome. There is no known vaccine or specific antiviral treatment. Primary treatment is symptomatic and supportive therapy. Recommended preventative measures include hand washing, covering the mouth when coughing, maintaining distance from other people, and monitoring and self-isolation for people who suspect they are infected. Efforts to prevent the virus spreading include travel restrictions, quarantines, curfews, event postponements and cancellations, and facility closures. The, these include the first, arguably successful, quarantine of Hubei, nationwide or region-wide quarantines across Europe, Western, South and East Africa, East Asia, South America, North America, and Oceania, curfew measures elsewhere in China and South Korea, various border closures or incoming passenger restrictions, screening at airports and train stations, and outgoing passenger travel bans. Schools and universities have closed either on a nationwide or local basis in more than 124 countries, affecting more than 1.2 billion students. The pandemic has led to severe global socio-economic disruption. The postponement or cancellation of sporting, religious, and cultural events, and widespread fears of supply shortages, which have spurred panic buying. Misinformation and conspiracy theories about the virus have spread online, and there have been incidents of xenophobia and racism against Chinese and other East or Southeast Asian people. My brothers and sisters includes Asians, people of Asian origin, Chinese, Japanese, and South Korean, all mankind. Usually I believe we're one family, one human family, my own beliefs. But of course, these incidents have happened. So I urge my brothers and sisters not to blame because of people's race, people's ethnic background, people's appearance. Now, that being stated, I don't know what this virus came from exactly. And there's a possibility that it was man-made. Sure, we've made during the Cold War so many weapons of war. And I'm calling for world peace as I've been calling for 2 years during my workouts. Even in the 300 challenge, my workout which, if you check in November, December, paradoxically, if you want some would say even prophetically, have included a worst case scenario back in October 2019 that a stock market crash triggered a global financial collapse which spawned World War III by a surprise attack by China and North Korea. By, of course, the powers in China and North Korea, because, of course, many Chinese are people who desire peace, such as in North Korea. But, of course, as everywhere in the world, we have people who want to dominate, want to subjugate, want to enslave mankind. That's not Adrian H. Dragon. It's time for liberty, a balanced, harmonious way. I'm dealing with my own emotional problems, resentments, and all sorts of things have been dealt with. Suicide, ill thoughts, depressions, to express our nature, desire to be loved, to be understood, and all these for peace, for prosperity. So I'm calling for peace. understanding, and brotherly love. Of course, my belief, I have to state that clearly, believe that it was my primary belief is that this was transmitted via snakes, as some scientists have proposed. Whatever those snakes were, whether just made by Mother Nature, the goddess, forgotten, but still dancing with the sun. I don't know, brothers and sisters. I don't know. I would like to know, but then there's so many things that I don't know. So, since biological warfare started 156 years ago, could be that somebody made a mistake somewhere in a lab, and who knows? Somebody knows more than others. Somebody knows more than others. Somebody don't knows more than others. I'm not ruling out the possibility of this being man-made, however. It's not my primary belief, but I do not dismiss it. Such as I do not dismiss, as I'm a man of peace, non-violence, except for self-defense. I've always proclaimed the self-defense measure anywhere on the world at any time for myself and others the right to self-defense. But I'm a man of peace, and it's possible that this was man-made, a mistake. I'm not ruling that out. I'm not dismissing it. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Don't believe the conspiracy theories out there, and we should be careful so that don't cross into xenophobia and finger pointing, calling for worldwide, local, national, and international creation of a citizen volunteer army, integrated with all levels of public, private organizations and institutions to secure food, housing, and transport for all mankind, starting here in Hawk Island, Montreal. But as I've said, I'm not ruling out it being man-made. Oh, have to excuse me just for one quick, short, maybe 37 seconds. I heard clicking on. Oh, not yet. I heard clicking on doing laundry at the same time and cleaning, purifying, reordering my room. Started a 22-day journey for cleaning, purification, and reordering of my temple here, which also has served as my gymnasium. Pandemic has led to severe global socioeconomic disruptions, and I'm gonna get back to that. I'm gonna read now the number of cases in order. Not all of them, 190, but gonna read. So 2019, 2020 coronavirus pandemic by country. China mainland cases 81,218, deaths 3,281, recoveries 73,600. That is a high rate of recovery, gotta say. In Italy, 69,176, and the number of deaths is 6,820. That's double, a bit more than double than China. How can that be? If it started in China, I don't know, maybe it's how the Chinese dealt with it since the beginning. Maybe it's something else. Because if I look at the recoveries in Italy, and we'll have to wait a few days, it's at 8,326 recoveries only. So the margin is just almost 90%, if not 93%, recovered in China, and only less than and about 11 to 13% recovered in Italy, if we do the math. In the United States, oh my goodness, my brothers and sisters in the US, was an American twice in the past life, 60,162 cases now, with 823 deaths and only 379 recovered. Spain, these numbers of course are ongoing. Spain, 47,610 cases. Deaths 3,445 and 5,667 recovered. Germany, 35,740 cases, 186 deaths, 3,540 recovered. Iran, 27,017, 2,200 deaths, 9,625 recovered. France, 22,304, 1,100 deaths, 3,287 recoveries. Switzerland, 10,537 cases, 100. Switzerland is very high per population. That is the highest per population because Switzerland is, from last time I remember, Switzerland was below 10 million people. It's a lot of cases per capita, per population. I mean, the percentage of the rate of the percentage of the infected population per total of percentage, if you will, per capita. Let's say per 1,000 people living in Switzerland is the highest by far. 149 deaths in Switzerland, 137 recovered. South Korea, 9,137 cases, 126 people died, 3,730 recovered. United Kingdom, 8,878 cases, 422 deaths, 140 recovered. Netherlands, 6,437 cases, 357 deaths, no recoveries reported. Austria, 5,577 cases, 30 deaths, and 9 recoveries. Belgium, 4,900 cases, 178 recovered, 178 deaths, and 547 recovered. Norway, 3,033 cases, 14 deaths, 0 reported recoveries. Portugal, 2,995 death cases, 40 cases, 43 deaths, 22 recoveries. Canada, of course, yours truly, DRAGAN, is a Canadian, North American, world citizen, but I'm Canadian. Hawk Island, Montreal. 2,000 were almost doubled in 3 days. Monday, we were like 1,300 on Monday. It's 2 days, Monday, Tuesday, now we're Wednesday. Reported cases 2,664 with 28 deaths. Oh my goodness, they were all below, like 9 just last week. 185 recoveries. Sweden, 2,526 cases. 44 deaths and 16 recoveries. Australia, 2,431 cases, 9 deaths, and 118 recoveries. Brazil, 2,201 cases, 2,201 cases, 46 deaths and 2 recoveries. Israel, 2,170 cases. Israel has gone up a lot too. Last week it was below 1,000. Last Wednesday, just in a week, double, maybe less than a week, 4 days. 5 deaths, 53 recoveries, and the list goes on. I'm just gonna continue pouring up coffee and continue doing reading. Stay safe, wash hands. Now I'm gonna do specific readings about the effects of the pandemic. So I'm gonna read the socio-economic disruption article. Socio-economic impact of the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic. The 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic has had far-reaching consequences beyond the spread of the disease and efforts to quarantine it. As the pandemic has spread around the globe, concerns have shifted from supply-side manufacturing issues to decreased business in the services sector. Supply shortages are expected to affect a number of sectors due to panic buying, increased usage of goods, to fight the pandemic and disruption to factories and logistics in mainland China. There have been widespread reports of supply shortages of pharmaceuticals, with many areas seeing panic buying and consequent shortages of food and other essential grocery items. My brothers and sisters, be mindful of this. And our soldiers on the front lines fighting, bringing with the trucks as I'm speaking in Canada, North America. Yours truly, I'm making now a public statement, Adrian H. Dragon. I'm offering you truckers who deliver our food now, the grocery store, who put the grocery stores on the shelves as yours truly was. My youth had worked for more than a year for Walmart, stacking the groceries on the shelves. Those workers and the transportation, the truck drivers, offering you lifetime free hugs, citizen massages, and washing your hands. Other practical things as I can do with my for you. Finance, I'll leave that to the bankers, my brother. Banking finance is essential, but we can do better. We can limit interest and we can share more of our wealth, fight selfishness and greed. There have been widespread reports of supply shortages of pharmaceuticals, with many areas seeing panic buying and consequent shortages of food and other essential grocery items. The technology industry in particular has been warning about delays to shipments of electronic goods. On 25th of February, it was expected that Australia, mainland China, that's a month ago, and Hong Kong would have the most direct economic impacts from the disruption, with Hong Kong already in a recession at that time after a long period of ongoing protests since 2019, and Australia widely expected to be in a recession with GDP contracting by 0.2% to 0.5% for 2020. But Morgan Stanley expects the economy of China to grow between 5.6 worst case scenario to 5.9 for 2020. That's interesting. As mainland China is a major economy and a manufacturing hub, the viral outbreak has been seen to pose a major destabilizing threat to the global economy. I got the Marie of the Economist Intelligence Unit forecast in January that markets would remain volatile until a clearer image emerged on potential outcomes. Some analysts estimated as early as January that the economic fallout of the epidemic on global growth could surpass that of the SARS outbreak. I think it already did. Dr. Panos Kouvelis, director of the Boeing Center at Washington University in St. Louis, estimates that 300 billion, again for 300 billion, have to clarify, a billion is 1,000 million. 1 billion has 9 zeros, so it's 1,000 billion. A million has 6 zeros and has 9 billions. Has 9 zeros. 300 billion impact on world supply chain that could last up to 2 years. The Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries reportedly scrambled after a steep decline in oil prices due to lower demand from China. Global stock markets fell on February 24th, 2020, due to a significant rise in the number of COVID-19 cases outside mainland China. By 28th of February 2020, stock markets worldwide saw their largest single week decline since the 2008 financial crisis. I have to state that was working full time, and during that financial crisis, my hours got cut 3 times. I had to change my plans. As millions of workers, I was a worker on the battlefield, the one who unloaded the trucks of the merchandise who unloaded the trucks, and I was affected 3 times. I mean, 3 times my work hours got cut, and had investments, was investing bi-weekly basis, was planning to go to a doctorate at university, and paradoxically in politics and finance, but my plans changed radically as couldn't afford it financially. The financial crisis affected me as workers in retail on the front lines. In many ways, some are said that we were still recovering from that and suffered from depression after didn't have family or friends for any financial support. And lived in working precariously and struggled. By 28th of February 2020, stock markets worldwide saw their largest single week decline since the 2008 financial crisis. 2008 financial crisis. Global stock markets crashed in March 2020, with falls of several percent in the world's major indices. As the pandemic spreads, global conferences and events across technology, fashion, and sports are being cancelled or postponed. While the monetary impact on the travel and trade industry is yet to be estimated, it is likely to be in the billions and increasing. By 16th of March, news reports emerged indicating that the effect on the United States economy will be worse than previously thought. I never made this call before, although I've written much theory, much propositions in the past when I've struggled a lot and spent a lot of years in the libraries of Montreal, reading, educating myself, trying to survive, which I did. Which I did. Which I did. And I'm calling now for what I've written in my propositions, a conversion of the debt. I have the papers somewhere here. I've written several pages, theoretical, but can be put into practice. And I'm creating for a system, digital if possible, and perhaps a dual system with still some cash, but mostly digital. I'm calling maybe even with technologies that we have through retina or fingerprint payment capabilities, a mass injection of $93 trillion for the creation of a global currency and have a US dollar, which I have somewhere when I went to New York a lot of years ago, and my brothers and sisters in New York are now fighting the war against Corona, and by that, that will be my contribution as a citizen for the creation of this currency, a global currency. I would call it the sun, moon currency or unit of exchange, even if the global dollar, if you will, whatever name, to serve the purpose of buying and selling. Never made this public call on call, but I'm calling on all banking institutions, private and public, BlackRock, not BlackRock and Blackstone, two different ones. BlackRock, they're going to be the first and amongst the ones who will support this call. Even Blackstone, um, BlackRock, yes, it's a financial institution. So yeah, that would be that's the case for me in my call. The coming days, weeks, and months ahead, will read, perhaps do a coffee reading that paper that I've written. It's not long, several pages in gist. It has to do with injecting and converting the existing total debt, public and private, corporate and citizen debt, and creating this currency. So, brothers and sisters, global stock markets crashed in March 2020 with falls of several percent in the world's major indices as the pandemic spreads. So now I'm gonna read specifically about the crash in March 2020. 2020 stock market crash. 2020 stock market crash is a global stock market crash that began on 20th of February 2020. 2020 2020 stock market crash is a global stock market crash that began on 20th of February 2020. That's interesting. Just because February is 10 years before that date. We had it was like a black sword object hit my head. I've recovered, or I'm recovering. I'm writing as I'm reading here, studying, learning. Neuroplasticity is science, magical science, I would say. It's neuroplasticity. Even after severe head trauma, after years, people recover and people can develop new skills. And one of them during my years of very much stress and pain and struggle was the pain of doing a lot of reading. I've studied, I've learned a bit of Russian, still know a little bit. So that was a new skill acquired during time of recovery by neuroplasticity. And yes, I'm an undocumented case of neuroplasticity in action. But anyways, the 2020 stock market crash is a global stock market crash that began on February 20th of February 2020, and that's reported by Wall Street and the FTS, the Guardian, and the Washington Post. And stock market crash from the Motley Fool. The Motley Fool. The Motley Fool. The 2020 stock market crash is a global stock market crash that began on 20th of February 2020, and like I said, 10 years before, around February, maybe between 11th and the 20th of February, had suffered a head wound, like it was like a black sword wound. The 2020 stock market crash is a global stock market crash that began on 20 February 2020, and like I said, it was like a wound between 11th of February and 20th of February. I can't say exact date. A black sword wound. My head. To recovery to my brothers and sisters, Canada, United States, and worldwide, to the front lines of our workers in healthcare, doctors, healthcare professionals. Your brother, sister is with you. Yeah, sister. A bit, yeah. A jar for the rentals? Sure. Excuse me, this is important food provided by my friend. How about the bag, Betty? Well, we continue. Brothers and sisters, brothers. That was important. That's that is my friend, oftentimes teacher, and the one I call my sister, who have to mention, has made this coffee with Dragon Emergency Crisis War on Corona reading session possible by financing, since I'm living in a financial crisis and we both go back and forth owing to each other money and finance and things. And 3 weeks ago, she bought me this instant coffee, which has served, she's serving and enabling me to read this. And I have to say thank you for. I'm a spiritual teacher, so thank you, forgotten goddess, Mother Nature, from the bosom who took the sun to make the coffee beans from the black fertile earth. From the black fertile earth, from the black fertile earth, Mother Nature used the water and the golden light of the sun and the heat to make the coffee beans, with the mystery and the process to reach right here in my temple room office, and served as a, to that trinity, adding a fourth dimension of, have served as a gymnasium and will serve as a gymnasium coming days, weeks, and months ahead, and enable me to do this reading, educate myself, and do and help how I can, and clean my room, purify it, order it, and work out. So thanks to her, I'm able to drink this coffee now, do this coffee with Dragon session. To her and the forgotten goddess, Mother Earth. To a new world order of peace, security, and liberty. The 2020 stock market crash is a global stock market crash that began on 20th of February 2020, as I've said. Between 11th of February and 20th of February 2010, I've suffered I was already going through the financial crisis because of the recession before, and like a black sword, force, black sword, power, black force, black sword, energy, if you will, struck my, like, multiple indices such as the Dow Jones Industrial Average, Nikkei 225, and the S&P SAX 200 all fell into a correction late February during one of the worst trading weeks since the financial crisis of 2007-2008, thus starting what is now known as the 2020 stock market crash. Global markets into early March became extremely volatile, with large swings occurring in global markets. On 9th of March, most global markets reported severe contractions, mainly in response to the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic, and they described Russia-Saudi Arabia oil price war. This became colloquially known as Black Monday 1, and at the time was the worst drop since the Great Recession in 2008. On March 9, most global markets reported severe contractions, mainly in response to the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic and the described Russia-Saudi Arabia oil price war. This became colloquially known as Black Monday, and at the time was the worst drop since the Great Recession in 2008. On March 9, most global markets reported severe contractions, mainly in response to the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic and the described Russia-Saudi Arabia oil price war. This became colloquially known as Black Monday 1, and at the time was the worst drop since the Great Recession in 2008. 2020 stock market crash. My goodness, look at that. Movement of the DJIA between January 2017 and March 2020. So up, 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 then down, 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 down. Showing the all-time high in February and the crash in February and March during the COVID 2019 pandemic. Movement of the Dow Jones Industrial Average between the day before the crash and Black Monday 2. Date 20th of February 2020. Ongoing stock market crash. Cause COVID-19 pandemic induced market instability. Failure to renew an OPEC deal. Corporate debt bubble. Corporate debt bubble. Corporate debt bubble. Recession fears. Market liquidity crises. Outcome: sharp rise in unemployment. Collapse of the tourism industry. Collapse of the hospitality industry. Collapse of the oil. Collapse of the price of oil. Destabilization and collapse of the energy industry. Increase in government debt. Major downturn in consumerism. Outcome: sharp rise in unemployment. Collapse of the tourism industry. Collapse of the hospitality industry. Collapse of the price of oil. Destabilization and collapse of the energy industry. Increase in government debt. Major downturn in consumerism. Outcome: sharp rise in unemployment. Collapse of the tourism industry, collapse of the hospitality industry, collapse of the price of oil, destabilization and collapse of the energy industry, increasing government debt, major downturn in consumerism. Outcome: sharp rise in unemployment, collapse of the tourism industry, collapse of the hospitality industry, collapse of the price of oil, destabilization and collapse of the energy industry, increasing government debt, major downturn in consumerism. 3 days after 3 days after Black Monday, there was another drop. Black Thursday. 3 days after Black Monday 1, there was another drop. Black Thursday, where stocks across Europe and North America fell more than 9%. Wall Street experienced its largest single day percentage drop since Black Monday in 1987, and the FTSE MIB of the Borsa Italiana fell nearly 17%, becoming the worst hit market during Black Thursday, despite a temporary rally on 13th of March, with markets posting their best day since 2008. All three Wall Street indexes fell more than 12% when markets reopened on March 16. At least one benchmark stock market index in all G7 countries and 14 of the G20 countries have been declared to be in bear markets. As of March 2020, global stocks have seen a downturn of at least 25% during the 2020 stock market crash and 30% in most G20 nations. Goldman Sachs has warned that the US GDP will shrink 29% by the end of the second quarter of 2020 and that unemployment may skyrocket to at least 9%. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has called the looming economic crisis akin to the Great Depression. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has called the looming economic crisis akin to the Great Depression. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison has called the looming economic crisis akin to the Great Depression. Background. Background causes scanning electron microscope. It's an image of COVID. If you wanna. The 2020 stock market crash occurred during the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic. What a, one of the most impactful pandemics since the Spanish flu in 1918. Rising fears and global economic shutdown due to the economic impact of COVID-19 is believed to be a main cause of the stock market crash, though many experts have argued that it's an accelerant rather than a sole core reason behind the crash. The 2020 stock market crash occurred during the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic. I would say not occurred, that verb conjugated in the past tense, but is occurring, is ongoing, is happening now. One of the most impactful pandemics since the Spanish flu in 1918. Rising fears and global economic shutdown due to the economic impact of COVID-19 is believed to be a main cause of the stock market crash, though many experts have argued that it's an accelerant rather than a sole core reason behind the crash. I'm going to read it one more time. The 2020 stock market crash occurred during the 2019-2020 coronavirus pandemic, one of the most impactful pandemics since the Spanish flu in 1918. Rising fears and global economic shutdown due to the economic impact of COVID-19 is believed to be a main cause of the stock market crash, though many experts have argued that it's an accelerant rather than a sole core reason behind the crash. Crash. Early decline. Early decline. On Monday, 17th of February 2020, Asia Pacific stock markets closed down, but European stock markets closed up, while US stock markets were closed in observance of President's Day. Oil prices fell. while the yield on 10-year US Treasury securities fell to 1.59%. On 18th of February, Asia Pacific stock markets closed up, while European stock markets, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, Nasdaq Composite, and S&P 500 all closed down. Oil prices rose by more than 2%, while the yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to 1.54% and 1.99%. On 19th of February, East Asia Pacific and European stock markets closed mostly up, while the Dow Jones Industrial Average finished up and the Nasdaq Composite and the S&P 500 finished at record highs. Wow, the record highs. Oil prices rose by another 2%, while yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to 1.56%, 1.56%, 1.56%, and 2% respectively. The People's Bank of China and the Central Bank of the Republic of Turkey cut their repo rates by 10 and 50 basis points respectively, while the Central Bank of Argentina cut its rate by 400 basis points. On 20th of February, stock markets worldwide closed mostly down, while oil prices fell by 1% and yields on 10-year and 30-year US securities fell to 1.51% and 1.96% respectively. Bank Indonesia cut its overnight rate by 25 basis points, while the Central Bank of Brazil announced it would cut its reserve requirement on 16th March from 31% to 25%, which is expected to release 135 billion in real, or equivalent of 29 billion US dollars, into the money supply. On 21st of February, stock markets worldwide closed down on the day, with the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the Nasdaq Composite, and S&P 500 closing down on the week, while oil prices fell and yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to 1.45% and 1.89% respectively, with the 30-year finish being an all-time low. Stock markets entry into a correction. On Monday, 24th of February 2020, the Dow Jones Industrial Average and FTSE 100 dropped more than 3% as the coronavirus outbreak spread worsened substantially outside China over the weekend. This follows benchmark indices falling sharply in continental Europe after steep declines across Asia. The DAX, DAX, CAC 40, and IBEX 35 each fell by about 4%, and the FTSE MIB fell over 5%. There was a large fall in the price of oil and a large increase in the price of gold to a 7-year high. Yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to 1.36% and 1.81% respectively. On 25th of February, stock markets worldwide closed down, while oil prices fell to their lowest level in more than a year, and the yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to new record lows of 1.31% and 1.80% respectively. Indonesian Finance Minister Sri Mulyani announced a 742 million fiscal stimulus program. On 26th of February, stock markets worldwide finished with mixed records, while oil prices fell for the fourth session in a row, while the yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell 1.30% and 1.80 respectively. The Bank of Korea declined to cut its overnight rate. On 27th of February, due to mounting worries about the coronavirus outbreak, stock markets in Asia Pacific and Europe saw 3.3 to 5% declines, with the Nasdaq 100, the S&P 500 index, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average posting their sharpest fall since 2008, and the Dow falling 1,191 points, its largest one-day drop since the 2008 financial crisis. Oil prices sank to their lowest level in over a year, while yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to 1.28% and 1.77% respectively. European Central Bank President Christine Lagarde indicated that while the European Central Bank was monitoring the outbreak, it was not yet causing long-term impact on inflation and thus did not require a monetary policy response. On 28th of February, stock markets worldwide reported their largest single week decline since the 2008 financial crisis, while oil futures saw their largest single week decline since 2009, and the yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to new record lows at 1.12% and 1.30% respectively. Outgoing Bank of England Governor Mark Carney stated that the British economy, which saw stagnation in manufacturing declines in fourth quarter of 2019, was being impacted by the outbreak because it relies heavily on tourism revenues and international manufacturing supply lines. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell stated that the outbreak was posing evolving risks to economic activity and that the Federal Reserve would use monetary policy to act as appropriate to support the economy, but that the fundamentals of the US economy remain strong. Ultimately, from 24th 4th of February to 28th of February, stock markets globally plummeted several percentage points, while on Wall Street the indices were down at least 10%. It was the fastest correction in market history from all-time high, taking merely 6 days to enter into correction territory. It was the fastest correction in market history from all-time high, taking merely 6 days to enter into correction territory. It was the fastest correction in market history from all-time high, taking merely 6 days to enter into correction territory. The sudden drop in late February was attributed to fears that China could produce a global economic shock, primarily due to the quarantines imposed by the state to combat the COVID-19 pandemic, which at the time were classified as an epidemic. Within weeks, stocks fell sufficiently enough to enter bear market territory, concerning reports of the viruses spread in South Korea, Italy, and Iran, also prompting fear in investors, mounting to a mass sell-off in Asia Pacific stock markets as well as European ones. Stagnation. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell announces a 50 basis point cut in the federal funds rate target on March 3, 2020 in light of evolving risks to economic activity from the coronavirus. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell announced a 50 basis point cut in the Federal Reserve fund rate target on March 3, 2020 in light of evolving risks to economic activity from the coronavirus. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell announces a 50 basis point cut in the federal funds rate target on March 3, 2020 in light of evolving risks to economic activity from the coronavirus. Over the preceding week, Bank of Japan Governor Haruhito Kuroda stated that the Bank of Japan would strive to stabilize markets and offer sufficient liquidity via market operations and asset purchases, and the Bank of Japan subsequently announced that it would repurchase up to 500 billion yens. Yuan is in China, yens, Japanese yen is in Japan. My mistake. I make mistakes every day. Made a lot of mistakes. Worth of government bonds. On Monday, 2nd of March, European and Asia Pacific stock markets mostly ended the previous week consecutive daily losses, while in the United States the S&P 500 gained 3.9%, the Nasdaq Composite gained 3.7%, and the Dow Jones Industrial Average finished 1,126 points up, or 4.4%, its largest one-day gain since 2009. Oil futures saw their largest daily gain of 2020, while yields on 10-year and 30-year US Treasury securities fell to 1.03% and 1.62% respectively. On March 3rd, The finance ministers and central bank executives of the G7 countries released a joint statement to reaffirm our commitment to use all appropriate policy tools to address the socio-economic impact of the outbreak, including fiscal measures where appropriate, with the central banks continuing to fulfill their mandates, thus supporting price stability and economic growth. Last drops of coffee. This will probably revise, and this has been a reading of the coronavirus, declared war against it, Adrian H. Dragon. And again, I'm making a call in the coming days, weeks, and months, and I will be reading from my theoretical paper, the proposal to take existing debt and existing money supply of all currencies in the world to create a world currency for securing and making a mixed markets for social security and liberty together in harmony, equilibrium, and balance, calling on these ministers that I've read about to join Adrian H. Dragon, citizen athlete, activist, and artist, independent, for the creation of a one world global currency for peace, world order, and security. Be loved, I love you.